beyond human existence today, living and dying in suburbia, no less.
Oh, that sounds intriguing.
It is. We're going to get into some serious stuff about, well, life and death and all that's in between, but, not in a totally bloomy way.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the author has a way with words, I'll say that. Makes you think, makes you laugh, sometimes even makes you want to call your therapist.
Could definitely relate to that.
Right. So to help us unpack all this, existential goodness, I'm so glad you're here.
Happy to be here, yeah.
Like right off the bat, the author hits us with this image. Human existence is a boat that's half in the water and half on shore.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Have you ever felt that kind of pull, like stuck between two worlds?
All the time, I think. It's that constant tension between, just surviving and actually like living, seeking something more.
Exactly. And the author doesn't sugarcoat it, no easy answers, no prepackaged ideas about immortality or any of that.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a real honesty there, right? Like facing the tough questions head on instead of pretending they're not there.
Totally. And that actually, I think, can be pretty freeing.
Oh, absolutely. Like you're taking ownership of your own meaning making instead of relying on, someone else's definition.
But then there's this whole other element of time. Life happens while you're busy planning about life, the author says.
Oof, I feel that.
It's like we're always one step behind,
It's like that experiment. Have you heard of it? Where they gave people chocolate?
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
So they could either have a piece right away or wait a bit for a bigger one. And most people chose to wait.
Makes sense. Bigger's better.
Well, here's the thing. They found that the anticipation, the waiting, actually created more pleasure than actually getting the bigger piece.
Whoa, really? So we're basically getting tricked by our own brains.
In a way, yeah. We're wired to focus on the future, but that can mean missing out on what's right in front of us.
And that makes me think about all the nostalgia in these excerpts. The authorship's going back to, simpler times, childhood, early relationships. It's like a yearning for something lost.
It's interesting, isn't it? Nostalgia isn't just sentimental. It has a real psychological purpose.
Oh, how so?
Well, when we feel anxious or uncertain, our brains try to comfort us by bringing up good memories.
Like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. There's this anecdote about one of the author's clients, George, who was in a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
So even though he couldn't walk, he constantly tried to unbubble his harness. It was like he was trying to connect with a time when he had more freedom.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's like this deep human need to hold on to something positive, even when things are tough.
But I guess there's a flip side to that, right?
For sure. Nostalgia could be a crutch. If we're always looking back, we might miss opportunities to make new meaning in the present. Think about it. When you've gotten stuck romanticizing the past, has it ever helped you move forward?
Good point. And speaking of pulling towards something, there's this theme of relationships in the book. Like the author is searching for a connection that can, and I quote, save him from himself.
He specifically mentions believing in a truer love that can do that.
Yeah, and it's such a vulnerable statement, isn't it? Like he's really putting it all out there.
But he also acknowledges, that even the most intense emotions can fade. People change, relationships evolve.
It's like he's both craving that connection and also afraid of how fragile it all is. And then there's this story about him taking his clients to, wait for it, strip clubs and casinos.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Even though he knew it was kind of risky. It's like he was pushing boundaries, maybe even ethical ones, in the search for genuine connection.
It's a bit of a head scratcher. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it speaks to how much he cared for these people. They were often marginalized, denied certain experiences. So he's trying to give them a taste of freedom, but at the same time, he knows there could be consequences.
Yeah, you've got to wonder, how far would you go for someone you care about, especially when it clashes with what society expects?
Big questions for sure. And it seems like his therapist, Emily, plays a part in all of this. He talks about the conversations about letting go of past loves, processing those patterns that keep him stuck.
Therapy could be such a powerful tool for that, right? For understanding our own emotional baggage and how to, unpack it.
Absolutely. It's like he's working through all these internal conflicts, trying to figure out how to connect with others in a way that's both real and healthy.
Yeah, it's not just about romantic relationships either, is it? There's this part where he talks about driving past a homeless man asking for money.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And he has this urge to connect, help out, but ends up just driving on.
And you can feel the guilt, right? Like sometimes the things we don't do haunt us even more.
Absolutely. It's like that struggle between wanting to do the right thing and maybe protecting yourself from discomfort or even, fear.
That's a real dilemma, that's for sure.
And it ties into this idea of, well, how connected we all are, really. We can't escape the impact our choices have on others, even when we try to.
Makes you think, huh?
It does. It does.
You know, something else that struck me was how much emphasis the author puts on the act of writing itself. Like, he's lost manuscripts to theft, computer crashes, you name it, and he still keeps going.
Yeah, he even jokes about keeping hard copy in his freezer.
Right. It's not about fame or recognition. It's something deeper, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yeah. Almost like he's using writing to process those raw emotions, grapple with those big questions that we all have.
There's this line, I have tried to become a writer of sorts and soon learned you aren't one until somebody reads your work. It's like there's so much vulnerability in putting your thoughts out there, opening yourself up to judgment.
It takes guts, for sure. Especially when you're exploring, personal stuff, the things that make you uncomfortable.
And that brings us to the author's views on pleasure. It's almost like he recognizes it's important, but approaches it with a bit of caution.
Yeah, there's a bit of suspicion there. Like, he's wary of how fleeting it can be.
He literally writes, certainly pleasure is a welcome reward for being human, though pain will soon follow. Like, what's the point of indulging if you're just going to feel bad afterward?
Exactly. But it goes beyond just physical sensations, He talks about this void or need that we're all trying to fill.
And sometimes we try to fill it with, fantasies. He mentions escaping into a fantasy world of film, paintings, and books to avoid the disappointments of real life.
I mean, who hasn't done that at some point, right? It's like building a little bubble around yourself to detect your heart.
But when does that bubble become a prison? When do those fantasies actually stop us from experiencing life as it is?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The author seems to be struggling with that balance, like wanting the comfort of fantasy, but knowing he needs to engage with the real world, even when it's hard.
It's like with that idea of truer love we talked about earlier, yearning for that connection, but also aware of the dangers of idealizing it.
And he's really honest about that, saying, people come into relationships with expectations that can never be met.
Because no one can truly save us, right?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, yearning for connection, but accepting the limits of, being human, finding joy in the journey together, even with the bumps along the way.
Speaking of bumps, there's this one image that really stuck with me. He describes feeling caught between the past and the future, tottering on the brink of a big black hole while immersed inside a furnace that generates massive supernova explosions. Intense. Much.
Yeah, that's quite the visual. He's really capturing that feeling of existential angst, the pressure of the past, the uncertainty of the future, all colliding right now.
And then he talks about this weird sensation of living a life that's already happened and also one that hasn't even begun yet. It's like he's trying to break free from linear time or something.
It's a fascinating concept, right? Like, he's looking for a way to experience the fullness of life beyond how we usually think about time.
Mind-bending, for sure.
Definitely makes you question how our perception of time shapes, how we experience everything.
And then, he brings up death, this image of a beautiful death, dying peacefully in a dream.
It's touching, isn't it? Like this deep desire for a gentle transition from life, a release from the pain.
Makes you wonder, what does a good death really look like? Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually too.
It makes me think about, how we try to reconcile the fact that we're all going to die with, wanting our lives to have meaning.
That's the big question, right? And the author isn't pretend to have all the answers, but he seems to be saying that meaning isn't something we find, it's something we create.
He's also big on questioning everything. Like, don't just accept what you're told. Be skeptical, dig deeper, find your own truth.
Which is kind of daunting if you think about it. With so much information out there, how do we even know what to believe?
But that's also what makes it empowering, right? It puts the responsibility back on us. We get to decide.
And then there's this emphasis on forgiveness for ourselves, for others.
Like recognizing that we're all going to make mistakes, hurt each other, and holding on to that pain just keeps us stuck. He puts it beautifully. Learning not to be too hard on yourself and others is a key to forgiveness and a way of paving new roads when the old ones become unfit for travel.
Yeah, it's like clearing out the mental clutter so you can actually, move on. But there's this other thing that keeps coming up, this sense that something's not quite right with the world, like the bigger picture.
Yeah, he's pretty critical of those in power, calling them elites, out of touch with everyday people's struggles.
He even talks about feeling like a foreigner in his own country.
Wow.
There's this one question that really hit me. When was the last time you saw a Native family sitting around a table in a restaurant near your home? Like, it makes you think about who we see, who we don't see, whose stories get told.
And it connects back to his work with people with disabilities. He saw how they were often excluded, denied basic freedoms.
It's like, who gets to decide what's normal, what's acceptable?
Right. And are we, part of the problem? Like, how do we contribute to those inequalities, even unintentionally?
Tough questions, but important ones.
Definitely. And it's not just about marginalized groups either. He's also critical of how obsessed we are with technology. People glued to their phones, he says, locked into a silent pantomime whose gestures mean nothing.
It's like technology can connect us, but also isolate us at the same time. It's weird.
Yeah, totally. It's a balance we're all trying to figure out. Have you ever caught yourself like mindlessly scrolling and feeling like you're missing out on, real life happening around you?
Oh, all the time. It's a struggle.
It is.
And then there's, the author's own struggles with mental health. He's so open about feeling lost, overwhelmed by the past.
It's refreshing, isn't it? To hear someone be so honest about, the tough stuff.
It makes it feel less lonely,
Sure. And he talks about how important therapy was for him to help process those emotions. Like, it's okay to ask for help. We don't have to go through it alone.
Exactly. Everyone needs support sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the end, even with all the challenges and the dark stuff, he seems to come to a place of hope.
He doesn't give us any easy answers, but he does encourage us to savor the present moment, appreciate the simple things, and connect with each other in meaningful ways.
And to be kind to ourselves, right? To each other. He reminds us, learning not to be too hard on yourself and others is a key to forgiveness and a way of paving new roads when the old ones become unfit for travel.
It's a beautiful way to put it, like letting go of what's holding us back and, embracing what's possible.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into beyond human existence, what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to take away?
I'd say don't be afraid to ask the big questions. Keep searching for your own truth. And remember, even when things feel uncertain, messy, even painful, there's still meaning to be found. The human spirit is pretty amazing,
It really is. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey. We hope it's given you something to think about, maybe even spark some new ideas. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep embracing the beautiful messiness of being human. Until next time.